afternoon and welcome to Quick Look. The top story that we are tracking for you this hour. EU's top diplomat Joseph Borrell has raised an alarm over Russia military buildup. Now, Borrell has warned that the risk of further escalation is evident since Russia has concentrated more than 150,000 troops on Ukraine's border and in annexed Crimea. Now, Borrell, however, declined to give a source for the figure, despite calling the military buildup on Ukraine's border as the largest ever. Borrell said no new economic sanctions or expulsions of Russian diplomats have been planned for now.
Military build-up in the Ukrainian border is very concerning. There is more than 150,000 Russian troops massing in the Ukrainian borders and in Crimea. The risk of further escalation is evident. We have to commend Ukraine for its restrained response, and we urge Russia to de-escalate and to diffuse tensions.
The United States has also expressed concern over Russia's reported plans to block foreign naval ships and other vessels in parts of the Black Sea. Now, the U.S. State Department has called Russia's plans to block parts of the Black Sea an unprovoked escalation. In his latest address, the U.S. State Department spokesperson has said, and I quote, Ned Price said, "This represents yet another unprovoked escalation in Moscow's ongoing campaign to undermine and destabilize the Ukraine," unquote. Now, Russia's move has triggered concerns as it could ultimately impact access to Ukrainian ports, including the occupied Crimea and the Kerch Strait. Now, the Kerch Strait is of crucial importance for the export of grain and steel from Ukraine. Russia has a history of taking aggressive actions against Ukrainian vessels and also impeding access to Ukraine's ports in the Sea of Azov. Now, this has led to the impact of Ukraine's international commerce. NATO has already called on Moscow to ensure free access to Ukrainian ports in the Sea of Azov and to allow freedom of navigation amid the provocative actions by Russia-led forces at the line of contact with Ukraine. The State Department has called this development particularly troubling, refusing to recognize Russia's purported annexations of Crimea. Now, the U.S. has reaffirmed its unwavering support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, extending to its territorial waters. The U.S. has also commended the Ukraine for its continued restraint in the face of Russian provocations and has called on Russia to cease its harassment of vessels in the region.
I haven't called Wright's family.
Now, let's say again, the U.S. has reaffirmed its unwavering support, total support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, and extending this to the waters of Ukraine. And the U.S. has commended Ukraine for its continued restraint. This even in the face of Russian aggression.
Spoken to the authorities there
For more on this story, we are being joined live by Lucy Hughes from Brussels. Thanks for being with us, Lucy. Now, the U.S. State Department has called this planned provocation by Russia unprovoked escalation, which could ultimately impact access to Ukraine's ports. Now, what kind of impact will this move have in the region, such an important region for Ukraine?
Well, yes, certainly that language was shared by NATO, by Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who was in was in Brussels last week talking to NATO chiefs to try to work out how to respond to the military build-up. Some 100,000 troops that have now been built up at the Ukrainian border in the eastern region of the Donbass. There has been condemnation from almost all Western allies of NATO, leaders, as well as, of course, the United States, Germany. We also had a meeting of EU foreign ministers yesterday to decide how to respond. There had been pressure from Ukrainian foreign minister who was in Brussels last week, who'd been been calling for a fresh round of sanctions against Russia in response to this military build-up, as well as further military assistance given to Ukrainian forces on the ground. But for now, it seems that the EU, whilst it says that the military build-up of tens of thousands of troops as well as military equipment was deeply worrying, the EU has decided to not put any sanctions in place for now and instead is calling for a de-escalation of tensions in the region.
Right now, Lucy, is this Russian move in line with the UN close, and do the other nations, such as the US, have any options?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the question there. Could you repeat?
Sure, Lucy. The Russian move, is it in line with the UN close, and do the other nations, such as the US, have any options with regard to this move?
Yeah, I mean, they certainly do. Certainly, that was what was put forward to EU leaders last week when Ukrainian's foreign minister was here in Brussels, was calling for greater military assistance, but also those sanctions on Russia. There has already been a program of sanctions announced on Moscow in relation to the alleged poisoning of Alexei Navalny. Clearly, Russian-EU relations are at a very low ebb, given the tensions over Alexei Navalny, this recent build-up at the border of Ukraine. But for the moment, the EU, for reasons that were discussed during a meeting of foreign ministers yesterday, has decided not to expand that program of sanctions for now. I think with fears that it might escalate tensions with Moscow. I mean, many analysts saying here that they feel that this is really a test of Moscow from Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, against the new Biden administration, against Ukrainian leaders, against the EU. It's really a show of strength. And really, I think the hope from the EU is that this will blow over in a couple of weeks, that this is really a show of force from Moscow, but it won't amount to an all-out conflict. So what we have at the moment is strong language from both the EU and from the United States calling for de-escalation, for Putin to stand down from this military operation. But I think for now, the imposition of sanctions, there are clear fears that that could antagonize tensions between Moscow and the West.
Lucy, it's great to talk to you. Thank you for bringing us all the updates.